Greetings and welcome back to Spot the Lie series. I'm Kurt Barber and I'm your host. Today's episode, episode 6, is very interesting to me. I get the opportunity to interview Dr. Dan Ariely. Now, some of you may know who he is, while others perhaps not. He is a professor of behavioral economics and psychology at Duke University. However, recently, NBC has released a series called The Irrational, which is based on the life of Dr. Ariely and his book, Predictably Irrational. Dr. Ariely has published multiple papers in scientific journals. Some of you may have read some of his New York Times bestseller books. Predictably Irrational, which the series is based off of, released in 2008. The Upside of Irrationality in 2010. The Honest Truth About Dishonesty, 2012. And Misbelief, recently in 2023. Sit back and enjoy this interview.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so I am here with Dr. Dan Ariely. Did I say your name correctly, sir?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I'm talking to you a little bit about some of your research that you've done throughout the years here. It's interesting to me as a person who has studied deception for a large period of my life that your research actually coincides quite a bit with some of the things that I have studied as well. So one of the books that I recently read, and I just started reading the Misbelief book that came out last year. I read in your book, The Honest Truth About Dishonesty, how we lie to everyone, especially ourselves here. And one of the things that you were talking about was that you equated everyone cheats a little bit. Do you equate cheating to deception or lying?
So first of all, I think in general terms, I would say yes. It's not that I don't think there's a difference between that, but I also use dishonesty because I wanted to define the act without overcommitting to the intention. So, if you say it's a dishonest act, it's possible that somebody is self-deceiving themselves, right? That they're not fully aware of it. So I ended up using the term dishonesty in order not to commit to the intention of the person. But I think there's a lot of overlap between all of those terms.
Sure. And during your career, how many experiments would you say that you've actually conducted regarding dishonesty?
Very hard to tell, but at least 100. Sure.
When one of the ones that particularly interested me was the Shredder experiment. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So the basic experiments we did relied on not detecting individual cheating, but detecting dishonesty across people. So take this example of the matrix task. We give people 20 simple math problems, and we don't give them enough time, and we see how many problems people solve on average. And we do it in condition 1, which is the control condition, that they can't cheat, that we check it. And we did it in the experimental condition where we say just report on that. Now, when we do this regular experiment, we can say what's the average difference between the group. So we say in the control condition, when we check people's performance, they solve, let's say, 4 problems with a standard deviation of, let's say, 1. In the condition where we allow people to declare their performance, they say that they solve 6 with a standard deviation of 1.5, let's say. Now, we can say statistically that it's very unlikely that those people did not cheat, right? That's what statistics is for. we compare the two groups and we say, hey, the group number 2 is very unlikely to come from the same distribution of the control condition. And for scientists, that's enough. But for more or less, like, to make it more appealing and clear, we use the Schroeder experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And what the Schroeder experiment allowed us to do was to detect dishonesty at the individual level, right? Not differences between groups. So if I say to you something like, solve all the problems that you can and report to me, I don't have actually tracking of how many you actually reported. But if I say, solve as many as you can and then shred the paper, but the shredder is actually broken and it only shred the sides of the page, then I can compare per individual if they lied and by how much. So scientifically it's not very important, but from a kind of an appeal perspective, it's very important to basically say, okay, so now we can do it at the individual level.
Interesting. Yeah, I was as I was reading that book, I was curious as to how you were able to figure out how many questions they actually got right compared to what they reported to.
So the shredder didn't shred the real paper, but if you wanted people to report and then be able to compare, you have to make them believe that you don't have access to that.
Right.
So that's why the shredder was important, and it was important that they felt it shredded the pages.
Well, excellent. So, generally speaking, why do you think most people are dishonest? What motivations might they have?
So I think that dishonesty is a view to look at everything in life. I don't think it's a separate activity. And I think that dishonesty is the case where motivations collide. So, you're late for a meeting with friends. Do you say the truth, which is to say, hey, it was more important for me to finish something at work than to get here on time? Or do you say there was a lot of traffic?
Yeah.
And somebody put too much salt in a very fancy dinner that they made for you. Do you tell them the truth, or do you say, I love it when it's so salty? It's every time that human motivation collides, we have a question of which one of them wins. Now, it's very easy to think about financial motivation, right? You can say, what do I more important, to make money or to be honest? But it's not just about money. There's a lot of things where human motivations collide, and then we have to decide what's more important to us. And whenever we solve that question with honesty is not the most important thing, we end up lying.
Excellent. So, in your numerous studies, in your hundreds of studies regarding dishonesty and deception, have you witnessed nonverbal indicators that accompany any of the deceptive cues that people are giving?
We have not. I'm aware, of course, that there's lots of interesting research on that. But aside from one set of studies, this was not what we focused on.
Sure.
We did one study with the lie detector test, with the polygraph.
Okay.
So that's the only exception. But mostly we looked at behavior, and we didn't look at any of the signals for behavior.
Okay. Have you noticed any statistical differences in deception between genders?
I have not.
Okay. How about? I'm sorry.
Now we did some cross-cultural comparisons, And we didn't find a lot of differences in cross-cultural comparisons. Now, here I think is what happens. Our tasks were new and abstract. They're not part of the cultural fabric. It's not like cheating in poker or in basketball or in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
These are new tasks that are not embedded in any cultural context. So I think because of that, they don't capture any cultural differences.
Mm-hmm.
Men and women, country A to country B. We all know that different countries are very different on the corruption index,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there are clearly different attitudes. But our task was not a part of that cultural context because it was such an abstract new task.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if we did the study on something that was more culturally embedded, we would have found more differences.
Okay. Last question, and then I know you're a busy person, so I'll let you go after that. But what do you want people to know most about irrational behaviors?
So what bothers me the most is that people have a very rational perspective on dishonesty. People think that people do the cost-benefit analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it bothers me is that if our theory is that people do a cost-benefit analysis, then anything we would do to reduce dishonesty is based on cost-benefit analysis. For example, we would increase prison sentences, or we would do things like that. But if we had the wrong theory, then our mechanisms to find solutions are not going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
So what I worry about is that we are applying theory in the wrong way. So I hope that people would understand that the real drivers of dishonesty is not cost-benefit analysis, and therefore our solutions should be very different.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and interview with Dr. Dan Ariely on Spot the Lie series. I'm Kurt Barber, I'm your host. Please like and subscribe this on YouTube at Kurt Barber if you enjoyed this. Thank you and be safe, and I look forward to seeing you at the next episode.